Okay. So whenever you're ready, guys, just sit onto your blanket, a cushion. If you prefer to sit directly onto the floor, that's okay. If you feel you don't need the support, okay. You're gonna cross the legs in what's called a Sukhasana. So you're crossing at the shins basically, and your feet will end up being below your knees. Actually, one foot in front of the knee, the other one underneath your knee. If this is in any way uncomfortable, you can have your knees a little wider and keep your toes also, or keep your feet slightly flexed to protect the knees. And then just pulling the flesh away from the sit bones laterally and back. Take your hands behind you. Try to keep the shoulders on top of your hips and then lift your chest as you arch your spine. And that may help the thighs and the knees to release a little. And then take your hands forward. Take an inhale just here, lengthening up through the sternum. On the exhalation, feeling your back ribs lengthening down towards your waist. And then begin to reach your arms forward. So you can let the palms rest flat on the floor or stay onto the fingertips, whichever you prefer. Again, any discomfort in the knees, it may be helpful to keep the feet active, slightly flex with the toes, drawing in. Try to keep the weight evenly balanced between the right and left sit bone. Don't feel you need to pull yourself forward using your arms, but instead let gravity do some of the work for you. Let the weight rest into the sit bones, so you don't want them. You don't want to begin to sit towards your feet. And then establish that connection with the breath, whereby on the inhale, you feel your navel extending, your breastbone reaching forward. And on the exhalation, the whole back ribs just lengthening down, moving in. Maybe if it's comfortable, you can allow your elbows to rest onto the floor. Continue to pull your hips back and down. Feel a deepening around your groins, a heaviness at the top of your thighs. And then whenever you're ready, on your next inhalation, begin to lift the torso, walk your hands back, returning to your seated position. Good. Begin by bringing your knees up first, uncross your legs, and then straighten them in front of you, just to neutralize the previous pose. And then bend your knees again, and we're gonna cross the legs the other way. I already forgot, by the way, which leg was in front. Second time, do whatever feels light and natural. And then I'm gonna heel toe the feet farther apart. They can be as wide as the knees or also a little wider. Flex your feet so heels and toes are in line. Pull the flesh away from the sit bones. Take the hands behind your fingertips pointing back. Keep the shoulders on top of your hips. And then lift up through the sternum, arch your spine, roll your shoulders back. And see if your thighs and your knees begin to release more. Take your hands in front of you. Stay onto the fingertips. Try not to round your arms like so, but instead let your upper arm bones roll back, the top of the shoulders soften. Maybe take a couple of breaths, just feeling the breath in this area just below your collarbones. And then you begin to walk your hands forward. Take your time. Inhaling, lengthening through the sternums. Also feeling that your navel is pulling forward. And then begin to slide your hands forward, maybe resting the elbows onto the floor. Keep your feet active. So if possible, you want a bit of a gap between your outer ankle bone and the floor. So you don't want them to rest onto the floor, you want them lifted. To emphasize the sensations around the hips and buttocks, you could also press the outer edges of the feet into the floor and try to drag your feet apart. So pushing the feet or the heels in opposite directions. On your next inhalation, lifting the head, walk your hands back. Good. Bring your knees up and then take your time to uncross your legs, straighten the legs in front of you. Good. Maybe keep a bit of a gap in between your thighs. Okay, so the heels in line with the sit bones. Keep the legs active, pressing down into the heels, opening the back of the knees, inner thighs rolling slightly inwards, and then you begin to fall forward. You don't have to go all the way down. With the exhalation, let your legs be heavy. So feel the weight of the bones in your legs sinking down. Keep pressing the heels into the floor. And with the inhalation, lengthen out of your waist. Feel the spine not only lengthening, but kind of moving deeper into the body. And then on your next inhale, let's come up. Good. We're going to take the legs back behind. Swing your legs back to come onto the hands and knees for all fours. If you were sitting on something, move it to one side. Beginning with a simple cat-cow stretch. I'm keeping the toes tucked under, but you can have the toes pointing back. So whichever you prefer, hips over the knees and the shoulders over your wrist. On the exhalation, around your spine, see if you can press into the outer edges of the hands to create more space between your shoulder blades and allow your head to hang, your chin to move in towards your collarbones. Inhaling, arching the spine. So we reverse the curves, the head is tilting back, and maybe press down into the base of the index finger, the base of your thumbs to lengthen the inner seams of the arms. On the exhalation, around your spine, let your head hang, press into the little finger side of the hands. Inhaling, belly towards the floor, tilting the head back. Lift up through the sternum. Maybe try to move the chest forward between your arms, between your upper arms, and then come back to a neutral spine. The next one is a little unusual. It's all fours with one leg raised. Let's start with the right leg. So just lifting the right leg. The right leg is just reaching straight behind me. So the foot is in line with the right hip. Okay, I can feel a bit of arching in the lower back beginning there. So I'm going to encourage the navel to pull back, kind of making the lower back slightly flatter. Now think about beginning to move your right leg to the left. So bringing your right foot towards the left corner of your mat. So you're bringing the leg across. Hi, Hilary. It's a little unusual. So we're not bringing the leg out, the opposite. So bringing the leg to the left. Try to keep the hips level. The right one will want to drop. So try to lift the right leg higher. Keep it straight. And then bring in your right knee to the floor. Good. And we're going to do the other side. So we begin by lifting the left leg straight behind us. Good. Try to keep the heel, the hip, and the shoulder on the left side all in line. Okay. Create a little more lift from the inner thigh. So allowing the left inner thigh to roll up towards the ceiling. And then you want to bring the leg across. Keep it straight. So left foot moving towards the right corner of your mat. Lift the leg a little higher and then continue to move it across. And then as you exhale, let's bring your left knee to the floor. Now let's go a little wider between your hands with the little fingers touching the outer edges of your mat. Tuck the toes under and then lift your knees and send your hips back and up. And then also step your feet wider apart. So the little toes touch the outer edges of the mat. They can also be off your mat. So it's a wide downward facing dog. And then bend your left knee. Bend it quite generously, maybe like 60 degrees or so. And then really try to straighten the right leg. Lengthen your right heel, the center of the heel, and the outer heel of the right foot down into the floor. And then let your hips move a little bit towards the left corner of the mat. So they move to the left. Now straighten your left leg. So the hips are back in the center. And then your right knee. Press into the outer edge of your left foot, the little toe side, and let your hips move towards the right corner of your mat. So it's a downward facing dog with a bit of side bending. You can bend your right knee more if you like. Press into the outer edge of the foot a little more. And then straighten both legs and come back to the center. Good. And just hold downward facing dog here. I didn't mention the arms very much, but the idea is to keep the arms balanced in the sense that you want your inner upper arms to roll up towards the ceiling and your outer upper arms to roll down towards the floor, and then should stabilize the shoulders. So you want the shoulder blades to kind of lie flat against the back ribs. You want the spine to lengthen, but without creating arching in the lower back or excessive arching in the lower back. If that's the case, draw the lower ribs in the front in, lengthen them towards the abdomen. Inhaling, looking forward, good. And then as you exhale, walk your hands back towards your feet. So you are at the back edge of the mat. Is it possible to kind of widen the distance between the feet, step out of your mat again? Good. And then bend again into the left knee. As much as you can, let your hips move to the left. Keep your left hand where it is, and then extend your right arm up to the sky. So it's a twist with a little bit of side squat. Coming back to the center, straighten your left leg, and you're going to do the other side. So bend into your right knee, let your hips sink down low. If possible, take your right knee back. Keep your right hand kind of below the shoulders or in front of the foot, and then twist, extending the left arm up to the sky. Push the floor away with the left foot. On the exhalation, let's come back to the center. Legs are straight, pelvis in the center. Bring the weight a little more towards your toes. If the knees are bent, that's okay. So keep them bent equally, okay? And then just fall forward, bringing the torso towards the gap in between your legs, walking the hands back. You don't need to straighten the legs immediately or fully. Inhaling, then looking forward, and just begin to crawl your hands towards the top edge of the mat, coming into a kind of wide leg downward facing dog. Good. And pull the hips back and up, and then take your time to bring the feet closer together. Let's say hip distance apart. Inhaling, looking forward. As you exhale, drop your knees to the floor. Take another inhalation, and on your next exhale, begin to move forward. Shoulders are beyond your wrist, and then lower your thighs, abdomen, belly, and chest. Press into the feet, into your hands. Keep your legs active as you lift your upper chest, lower ribs, lifting up to the front of the armpits, lengthening the elbows down, lengthening the outer upper arms down. Just hold here for a moment. Press into the front of your thighs. You want to feel the outer thighs rolling down towards the floor. Take an inhalation. On the exhale, tuck your toes under, come to sit onto your heels, and then come back up into downward facing dog. We're going to do a little variation of dog. Okay, so at the moment, the legs are parallel, feet also parallel. So is it possible to cross the right leg behind the left leg? So you're crossing at the knee, basically. Your right foot resting beside or slightly behind your left foot. Then bend your left knee, the knee which is in front, and straighten your right leg. So bending the left knee, straightening the right leg. Try to really reach down with your right heel. Let your hips move towards the left corner of your mat. Try to push out from your left hand a little more to send the hips back and further to the left. And then just bring your right foot back where it was. So feet parallel again. So it's the classic downward facing dog. And we're going to do the other side. So just cross the left leg behind the right leg. You're roughly crossing at the knees. And then bend your front knee, right knee. Straighten the left leg, the one that it's behind. The more you bend the front knee, the easier it will be to straighten the left leg. So let your right hip drop and see if you can roll the left hip higher towards the ceiling. Press into the outer edge of the left foot. Push out from your hands equally, especially the right hand. And then coming back to the center for your classic downward facing dog, and just pausing there, noticing any sensations at the back of the legs. Inhaling, looking forward, and then as you exhale, step your right foot forward in between your hands, coming to a high lunge first. Take your time. And then, sorry, Nibu, we're actually going to take the knee to the floor now. Excellent. Now, is it possible maybe to bring the right foot forward an extra centimeter? So we're going to go a little longer in this stance. And make sure that your back foot, you're resting onto the top of the back foot. And we'll see why in a moment. At the moment, in the classic low lunge, you're resting onto the center of the knee. So we're going to do a variation with the twist. So begin to turn the torso a little bit to the right. And then let your back leg roll onto it, begin to roll at least onto its outer edge. So you want to be onto the outer kneecap. You want to begin to roll onto the outer thigh. And it may be that the foot is rolling as well. So you end up being onto the outer edge of the foot. I hope you can see. So not toes pointing back, but the toes begin to point towards the right edge of the mat. And then maybe the right hand here to just apply a little bit of pressure, letting the sacrum release. This is, I think it's enough in itself, but if you like, you could press into the outer edge of the back foot and then lift the back knee slightly. It's just like a centimeter or two. So gravity will create a little more traction. Drop your knee to the floor, left knee, take the hands to the ground. And now we're gonna re-straighten the back leg, tuck your toes under, good. And we have the perfect distance for plank, I think. So wrist below the shoulders, or maybe slightly in front. Lift the back knee, lift your hips higher if you need, and just step your right foot back. And then bring your hips down a little lower. Any issue with the lower back, or if you find the pose a little challenging, keep your hips higher, okay? So don't let them drop really low, otherwise it becomes really difficult to sustain. Try to balance the weight not so much into the toes, but more towards the balls of your feet. So reach your heels back. And then think about kind of pulling the skin of your thigh, the muscles of your thighs towards the groin, or pulling your the femur bones back into the pelvis. And then lengthen your breastbone forward from the outer arms in. Inhaling. On the exhalation, if possible, bend your elbows, come down with straight legs. If we need to bend the knees, we'll bend the knees. Coming all the way down, toes pointing back, press into your hands, elbows pointing back, and then on the inhalation, we'll lift. Good. Keep all the toes on the ground, including the little toes, top of the shoulders soften. Think of the front of your armpits lifting. Breathe in and out as necessary, and then come back to your downward facing dog. So we're going to do the lunge variation now on the other side. Looking forward, inhaling. As you exhale, step your left foot forward, drop your right knee to the floor. Now your pelvis is pointing forward. What we're going to do, it's a rotation. So let's begin. Make sure first that you're resting onto the front of the right foot, and then turn your hands a little bit, walk your hands, sorry, to the left. We don't need much. And then begin to kind of roll, turn the right leg. So you're more towards the outer seam of the leg. You're resting onto the outer edge of the foot with the toes pointing out to the left and not back. We can stay here, maybe left hand resting onto the sacrum, applying a little bit of pressure. Or the other option is to just press into the foot and lift the lower leg, lift the knee. You don't want to lift too high, you're going to lose otherwise the lengthening action. Let your shoulders draw back, so lean back a little bit with the upper body so we're not rounding. And then take your knee to the floor. Now we're going to straighten the knee, turn the foot so you're again onto the toes, and then coming back into plank from here. So hands flat, lift the back knee, and then step back into plank pose. Again, as before, hips can be a little higher if you find the pose a little challenging. outer arms firming in, breastbone reaching forward. The action is matched by your feet reaching back. Take an inhale, and then as you exhale, make your way down. Keep pointing your toes back, elbows also reach back, and on the inhalation, lift. Press the front of the thighs just below your groins into the mat. Pull your pubic bone forward so you feel the flesh of the buttocks lengthening down towards the back of the knees. Elbows in. And then as you exhale, push back into downward facing dog. And then inhale, look forward. As you exhale, step your right foot behind the right wrist, left foot behind the left wrist. Inhaling, coming up onto the fingertips, bend your knees, tabletop. And on the exhalation, fall forward, letting the torso rest onto your thighs, releasing the head, back of the neck, lengthen, chin in. On the inhale, press into your feet, and then reach your arms up, overhead. And on the exhalation, releasing your arms. Please stay where you are, but I'm going to turn this way because the next pose is a little unusual. So it's a variation of this one, okay? So let's begin by reaching the arms up. Good. And then as you exhale, you're going to have a look at the legs. Take a step, your right leg behind, okay? Then bend the front knee, so it's your left knee. Keep the left hand onto the left hip and reach your arm out. But this is really good for the IT band, for the outer hip. So bend more into the front knee. Try to keep the right leg, the leg behind, really straight. Press into the heel. Lift up through the pubic bone a little bit. You can reach outwards more. And then on the inhalation, coming back to the center. Good. And we're going to do the other side. So start with your feet slightly apart. Inhaling, arms up. And then as you exhale, just take your step with your left foot. Good. So you don't want the feet to be too close. Then bend your front knee. Try to keep the back leg straight and extend your left arm up. Really press into your left foot as you lengthen. Bend into the front knee a little more if that feels okay. Let your right hip here drop down. And then on the inhalation, let's come back to the center. Good. And now we're ready for a couple of sun salutation. I hope that this one was effective, guys. We start with Surya B because we warm up enough, I think. So feet are together, slightly apart. And then bend your knees and just swing your arms up. Okay, let's try to take the knees back a little bit. Let's try to drop the hips and just lengthen your arms from your side ribs. Okay, so lengthening the arms out of your waist. Take an inhalation. Okay, a little straighter in the arms if possible, even if you need to go wider, yeah? Part a little lower with the knees if possible, inhaling. And then as you exhale, reach your arms forward. Let the fingertips touch the floor with the knees still bent. And then begin to lift the sit bones up towards the ceiling. Keep a light abdominal engagement. That will help to bring the torso further down. Have a look at your ankle bones, inner and outer. Try to have them level. So feel the inner arches of your feet rolling up away from the floor. Flatten your hands. Inhale, look forward, bending the knees. Step back into your downward facing dog. Inhale, look forward. As you exhale, step the right foot forward in between your hands. You can keep the back foot as it is, so heel floating, or you can turn the heel and then drop it to the floor, toes pointing towards 10 o'clock, whichever you prefer. And then on the inhalation, keep your front knee bent, come up, rest the hands onto the hips. I have the feeling, maybe because of the way I came into this pose, that the weight is very much resting to the front leg. So I'm going to straighten the front leg for a moment. Find the center of gravity, a little more engagement in the back leg. Pressing down into the outer edge of the left foot and then bending the right knee again. So feeling the weight of the trunk, the weight of the torso is resting onto the pelvis. On the inhalation, reach your arms up. And then notice how you're feeling in the back knee. Do you have a sense that the inner ligament here, the inner knee is shortening? If so, press into the outer edge of the foot and lengthen through the inner seam of the leg. So the skin here pulling up towards the groin. Front knees pointing forward. Lengthen from the right groin towards the right knee. Inhaling, on the exhalation, begin to reach forward. Keep the length in the spine, the extension through the upper body. And then take the fingertips to the floor. Roll your left heel out if it was turned in. And then step back into downward facing dog. From here, float forward into a plank pose. And then make your way down. If you want to bend the knees as well as the elbows, please do. You don't need to keep your legs straight. Once you land on the floor, toes pointing back, press into your hands into the whole length of the front legs as you lift. Feel also your navel pulling up away from the floor, chest bone reaching up, outer upper arms stretching down towards your mat, and back into downward facing dog. Let's pause for a couple of breaths before we repeat on the other side. Inhaling, looking forward. As you exhale, step your left foot forward in between your hands. It's quite nice to come up onto the fingertips just to lift the shoulders. And then you can decide the position for the back foot. You can leave it as it is or turn the right heel slightly in so the foot is at a slight angle. And then slowly coming up. Good. I have difficulty keeping the heel down on this side. So for me, it's lifting slightly. I could bend the front knee a little more. And I'm trying to keep the effort in the legs equal. So as much as I lean or bend into the front knee, that's counterbalanced by really stretching back through the right heel. Shoulders on top of the hips. I can feel this hip wanted to roll back. So I'm going to try to encourage to roll forward, inner thigh spiraling back. And then on the inhalation, reach your arms up towards the sky. Tune in with the breath in a way that when you exhale, you can yield to gravity. Let the hips lower a little. On the inhalation, just reestablish the grounding. So pressing into the feet, reaching the right heel back and lengthening your arms up. Inhaling, and then as you exhale, begin to reach your arms forward, lengthen, maybe pause for an extra breath before you touch the floor, and then take your fingertips to the ground. Good. Hands flat, lift your hips higher, step back into downward facing dog. From here, inhale, float forward into plank, shoulders on top of your wrist. And then on the exhalation, make your way down. Feel free to bend the knees as well as the elbows, please. Toes pointing back. Good. Make sure that the legs are not too far apart. And then on the inhalation, lifting. There's a lot of work in the legs here to support the lift in the spine. And on the exhalation, back to downward facing dog. Complete the exhale and then look forward, and you can lightly jump or step your feet forward one at a time, whichever you prefer. I'm gonna step. On the inhalation, if necessary, keep your knees bent as you lift the torso, lengthen through the spine. On the exhalation, fall forward, torso towards your thighs, head towards your shin bones. On your next inhale, bend your knees even further as you swing your arms forward and up. So we finish as we began, and then straightening the legs and releasing your arms by your side. You're going to come into chair with a twist. So on the inhalation, bend your knees, and you can swing your arms forward and up, drawing a semicircle. Take your hands to the heart, and here I think it's possible to go down a little lower and to take your knees and hips further back, okay? Because the arms are not overhead. And then turning to the right side. So your left elbow or upper arm, so perhaps resting onto the right thigh. Palms together, elbows pointing in the opposite direction. Try to press the heels of the hands into each other and the little finger side at the base of the little finger. That will help to open the upper back. Now the knees may come out of alignment. Have a look. Is it possible to keep them in line? If there are lower back issues or sacroiliac issues, the back of the pelvis, allow the knees to come out of alignment. Little lower for the last few breaths. Inhale. As you exhale, return to the center, fingertips to the floor. Don't feel your need to straighten the legs immediately. Let the body first adjust to the new pose, and then you can work towards straightening the legs. Allow your head to hang. Bring your chin towards the chest so you can feel the release at the base of the skull. You're going to return to chair and repeat the twist on the other side. Bend your knees, let the weight, bring your weight into your heels a little more, and then swing your arms up, just briefly, hands to the heart. Inhaling, exhaling, twisting to your left. So left elbow resting onto the left thigh. I know the thighs start to complain at this stage. Press into the base of the little finger, push out from them. It's going to help to engage the muscles in your upper back, just below your shoulder blade. 2 more breaths. And then as you exhale, come back to the center, fingertips onto the floor, and we work towards straightening the legs. Balance the weight between the heels, the balls of your feet. Balance the engagement in your ankle bones. So often the inner ankles roll in. Inhaling, looking forward, flatten your hands again, step back into downward facing dog. Okay, I'm going to ask you for the next sequence to bring your feet together. So big toes, inner knees touching here. This is kind of a variation of a pose we did during the warm-up, okay? Whenever you're ready, swing the right leg back behind you. So 3-leg downward facing dog. Good. If you find it difficult to raise the leg, bend your left knee slightly, and then see if you can raise the leg higher, and then straighten your left leg again. And we're gonna bring the right leg across. So think about right foot moving toward the left corner of the mat behind you. So bringing the leg across. Keep your hips level. See if you can lift the right leg a little higher as you bring it across. And then release the right foot onto the floor, next to the left. Second side, inhaling, lifting the left leg up towards the sky. Try to keep your hips level. Have your toes pointing down. Reach the heel back towards the wall behind you. Lengthen especially through the inner seam of the leg. So from the groin to the inner knee, from the inner knee to the inner ankle. And then you're going to bring the leg across towards the right corner of your mat. You can move it outwards as much as it feels feasible. And then bringing your left foot back down onto the floor. Inhaling, looking forward. As you exhale, step the right foot forward in between your hands. Good. We're going to come up into a high lunge. This time, though, I'm going to ask you to keep the left foot as it is. So heel floating, you're resting onto the ball of the foot and the toes. And then on the inhalation, push up from your right foot. Reach your arms up. Arms parallel initially, and then let your right hand rest onto the right hip here. And I hope you can see, but this right hand is encouraging the right hip to draw back. So the flesh of the buttocks here lengthening, okay, towards the sacrum. So keep the right hand where it is, and then we're going to begin to make a crescent shape with the left arm. So let your arm reach over to your right. It's not a back bend, it's just a side stretch. So apply a little bit of pressure with your right hand. Press into the right hip. Continue to reach your left arm out. Coming back to the center. So the arm is now pointing towards 12 o'clock. And then reach your arms forward and down. See if you can keep the palm of the hand flat. And allow the back foot to slide back a couple of centimeters. We can be lower here. You can have the hips lower than the front knee. And then begin to turn to the right, coming into lunge with a twist. And again, with this right hand, I'm encouraging this movement of, how can I say, the right hip drawing back, but you want the knee to stay pointing forward, okay? And then extend your right arm up to the sky. Keep your back leg really active, opening the back of the knee. Rotate the arm now, top arm internally, and bring it over. Internally means that when you look up, you can see the crook of the elbow. Lengthen from the left heel into the fingertips of your right hand. Inhaling. As you exhale, take your hand to the outside of your right foot. Lift your hips higher. Step back into downward facing dog. Let's go through the vinyasa. So coming forward into plank pose on the inhale. Please, if you're getting tired, drop your knees to the floor, then bend the elbows, and just scoop the chest in between your arms. Keep your toes pointing back. Press the front of the thighs into the floor, and then push into your hands as you lift and arch your spine. Elbows draw in and stretch downwards, and then back into downward facing dog. Okay, the sequence begins with the 3-leg downward facing dog variation. So let's bring the feet together, big toes, inner knees touching. And when you're ready on the inhale, swing your left leg back. Think of the lift as coming from the abdominal region. So there's no arching in the lower back, it's just a natural arch. So you create the lift from the deep core muscles. And then we're gonna bring the leg across. So think about left foot towards the right corner of your block, of your mat, sorry. And then looking forward. We did this already, guys. Sorry, I got confused. Step your left foot forward. Apologies. We already did the leg. And we're gonna come up in a moment. First, so just let the shoulders lift a little bit. Let your hips drop, but not lower than the front knee, at least initially. And then push up from the left foot, ground into the ball of the right foot, and slowly come up, arms reaching up. Good. Adjust your stance. If there's any knee issue, guys, go a little shorter. So prioritize grounding or stability over the length of your stance, okay? Bring your left hand to rest onto the left hip. Inhaling, and then as you exhale, begin to make a crescent shape to the left. So the right arm reaching over to your left. So while your arm is reaching out, is it possible to drop the right hip down towards the floor? So keep your right hip pulling downwards as you extend through the whole length of your left arm, left side of your trunk. Right side, sorry. Inhaling, coming back up. Good. And then take your right hand to the floor, just below your shoulders. Here it's where we can lengthen the stance because the arm is providing extra support. So there's not much pressure, not too much pressure on your joints. And then you begin to turn. Lean back with your shoulders. So you want to open the front of your chest. Extend the left arm up to the sky. Rotate the arm internally. So crook of the elbows facing you. And then bring your arm in line with your left ear. Extend back through your right heel and lengthen your left hand in the opposite direction. Inhaling. As you exhale, take your left hand to the floor. Lift your hips on the inhalation, and then as you exhale, step back into downward facing dog. Guys, we're just gonna do the last vinyasa and then take a short rest, okay? So coming forward into plank pose on the inhale, and then as you exhale, make your way down. Optional bending the knees is always there. Toes pointing back, press into the base of the fingers, heels of your hands as you lift. Pubic bone pulling forward, tailbone lengthening back, shoulders soft, elbows drawing down, and back into downward facing dog. Good. Look forward, begin to walk the feet towards the hands, hands towards your feet. Bend your knee. Good. kind of roll back. This is the resting pose we're gonna do, okay? And then hug your knees to the chest. Just rock side to side onto the sacrum. And then roll over onto your left side. As I do, and I hope you can see, I'm gonna scoop the bottom hip a little bit to the right. Keep the knees on top of each other, feet on top of each other. The heel just below your knees, so the legs are bent at 90 degrees, and then turn the torso to the right. Let the right arm rest by your side. Left hand resting onto the right knee or thigh. And you can just relax in the twist, okay? If you want to work a little more actively, you can do a couple of things. One is with your left hand, pull the skin of the thigh towards the knee. Or you can really work from the abdomen and try to move from your navel. So turning the navel from left to the center, from the center to right. Coming back to the center now. Have your knees pointing up for a moment. Make sure you have space on your right side. And then rolling over onto the right. So just make sure that you want the back of the knee to soften. So heels just below your knees, leg bent at 90 degrees. Turn your torso. Let the left arm rest onto the floor. The elbow doesn't need to be straight. You can bend the arm. And you can just relax in the pose. If you want to work actively, then you can repeat those variation I suggested. So use your right hand to pull the skin of your thigh towards the knee. Or focus on your abdomen, your navel, turning from right to left. A third option would be to try to keep the knees leveled. So just bring your left knee forward, right on top of the right, and that will increase a twist in the thoracic area, upper spine. And then coming back to the center, let's see if possible from here to rock up to sit, okay? And then take the hands behind you to push into a squat, hands in front of you, come back into downward facing dog. This is the last one of the standing poses, but let's begin at the top edge of the mat. So step your feet forward behind your hands, and then again coming up. Good. And also that give us a chance to grab the prop that I mentioned at the beginning. I have a yoga block, but a sturdy, tall container would do, or a stack of books, okay? So, and just place it in front of you. It's the last of the standing poses. We kind of warm up precisely for this one, okay? Take a step back, keep the right foot where it is, and take a step back with the left foot. Often, almost magically, when you step a foot back, it already turns, it's slightly turned outwards. So have a look, toes should be pointing towards 10 or 11 o'clock. Okay. Now the feet can be on the same line, heel to instep, or you can have this foot farther out, so feet in line with your hips. And then use your hands to encourage this action. Left hip forward, right hip back, press into the outer edge of the back foot, lengthening the inner seam of the leg, inner knee. Okay, hands onto the hips to begin with, and then extend your left arm up, inhaling. As you exhale, reach forward, and with the right hand, I'm encouraged this hip to stay back. So keep the right side of the torso long, reaching down, and let's leave the block on the inside of the foot. If you're familiar with the pose, you've done it before, you could take the block to the outside of the foot, okay? I'm gonna leave it on the outside. And encouraging again this hip to pull back, so I feel a deepening in the groin. And as I push out from the left hand, I begin to turn. Try to keep the plumb line of your spine, okay? So how can I say, the spine is just lengthening over the block, so not beginning to move to the right. Keep the shoulders, so as you begin or deepen the rotation, once you reach the point where the right shoulder is tucked over the left shoulder, reach your right arm up. If the shoulders are are not in line, it can be uncomfortable to raise the arm. So think about, again, this right buttock lengthening back. You want the right sit bone to turn and point towards your left heel. Inhale. As you exhale, release. Take both hands onto the block, whatever you're holding onto, and see if you can fall forward over the leg. Now, if you have long arms, maybe the fingertips will reach down, so you don't need the block, use the floor. Here, the action is a bit different because the focus is on pulling the hips back, a little bit like downward facing dog. Lift the toes of both feet, see what happens. Inhaling, looking forward, bend into the front knee. Step your left foot forward, fold for a moment, the block shouldn't be in the way. And then again, coming up. And we're gonna prepare to do the other side, okay? So reposition yourself if need be, and then take a step back with the right foot. It's not a massive, it's not a very long stance. It's probably the shorter of the standing poses in terms of stance. Feet in line with the hips, or you can have a narrower stance, heel to instep. It makes it a little more wobbly. Hands to the hips, and encourage that anti-clockwise movement. Right hip forward, left hip back. Squeeze both inner thighs towards the midline, as if you were like with your legs. Left hand onto the left hip. Inhaling, reaching the arms up. As you exhale, reach forward. So lengthen the arm out of your waist. Take your right hand into the block. So ideally the hand flat. So that's why we need something a little sturdy, okay? And then begin to turn. Now, if your back heel is lifting, that's okay. So I wouldn't worry too much. Maybe it's to protect the knee, but try to lengthen back. So you want to actually engage the calf muscles on the right side. Continue to turn. And once you feel that the shoulders are more or less stacked on top of each other, you can extend your left arm up to the sky. So draw your left hip in towards the midline. So think of your left sit bone. You want it to remain in line with the center of your left heel. Inhaling, as you exhale, take your left hand onto the block. So I got one hand on top of the other one. Go and pull your hips back. So maybe lift your toes, see what happens. If you want to reach the hands to the floor, please do, okay? So you don't have to use the block if it's not helping. Inhaling, looking forward. As you exhale, bend the front knee, place the block or the stack of books to one side, whatever you're using, hands flat, step back into downward facing dog. We're just gonna use downward facing dog as a transition posture to the next, okay? Look forward, step your feet towards the hands towards your feet, then bend your knees to come into a squat, and then with the help of your hands, or without the help of your hands, in which case reach your arms forward, just come to sit, roll back to sit. Good. Okay, guys, a couple more, sorry, of seated posture. I'm gonna turn this way, so hopefully you can see me better. I'm gonna use the blanket to sit on. If you have a yoga block, some of you was just showing the new purchase, use this one, okay? Maybe even two if you want. Sorry, I'm just drawing the house. Okay, so just sitting onto your support, knees pointing up toward the ceiling. And I'm gonna try to mirror you, okay? Oscar, maybe move so they can see what I'm doing. So take your left leg underneath your right leg, so that your knee is pointing straight forward, okay? And then bring your right foot across. Sorry for this, got an intruder here. Okay, so now you can see left knee pointing forward and the right foot to the outside. I don't know if you can see the toes, but toes, shin bone and kneecap are all in line. So you don't want the foot to turn this way. It's twisting the ankle too much. And just feel the plumb line at the front, navel, sacrum, crown of the head, and the knee also in line with the same plumb line. And then wrap your arm around the leg. keep this right thigh pulling back, the right sit bone sinking down into the floor, and begin to turn. And try to keep the same plumb line. So knee, spine, crown of the head, right hand behind you, and you begin to turn. As you turn, with each inhalation, try to sense or visualize your breath spiraling up and around the spine. That's for the inhale. And the exhalation, breath spiraling down and around the spine. If possible, take your left elbow to the outside of the knee and then press into the knee with the upper arm. Your left arm is doing a sort of stop sign. Keep also pressing down into your right foot as if you were trying to stand on that foot. And then as you exhale, let's release. Good. And cross your legs. Maybe straighten them in front of you, just for a moment. Bend both knees again, and we'll be doing the second side. So taking your right leg underneath your left. Okay, so you see this knee is pointing forward and not out. So it's important, in line with your navel, sacrum, or the plumb line, and then bring your foot across. Apologies, I forgot to mention for the first side that if the crossing of the legs is causing any discomfort to the ankles, knee, or hip joint, the bottom leg can be straight like so. It's the same pose, okay? So the second side, I'm gonna show it like this. And then drop the arm around the leg. Take your left hand behind you. So try to keep even length in the two sides of your trunk and then begin to turn. Now, the action of your left foot, it's really important. So you actually really want to press into the base of the toes. And why we do so, it's just to pull the head of your thigh bone back deep into the hip socket and to keep your pelvis grounded and even, and then begin to turn. If your bottom leg is straight, okay, we need to keep it active. Start to turn. Again, working from the ground up. So we begin by turning from the abdomen or lower back, then you move up towards the upper abdomen, the middle of the back, and then further up into your upper back and the shoulders. Take your arm to the outside of the leg. So push with the upper arm, your elbows. You get a little extra leverage thing. And then as you exhale, let's come back. Okay, uncross your legs, straighten them in front of you. Here I'm gonna show again from the side. So Dandasana, so it's staff pose with the hands. So depending on the length of the arms, you may rest onto the palms of the hands or onto the fingertips. It's the same. So just lengthening the spine. I do have a bit of a tendency to kind of arch like this. So don't do like me. So to keep your lower ribs in, okay? And feel there is a more even lift from the front and the back. Inner thighs are rolling in, back of the legs kind of sinking down into the floor, heels pressing down. And then maybe let's take the hands behind us like this, fingers pointing back, and begin to lean forward. Keep the bones of your legs pulling downwards, sinking back. Inner thighs rolling in, that creates more space into the sacral area, into the lower back. If this is too much, if there's an injury in the knees or your hamstring, actually more precisely, come into pose with the knees bent. It's the same, kind of same principle. On the inhalation, feel your navel pulling forward, your breastbone reaching forward and up, top of the shoulder softening, and then you continue to fold, maybe reaching to grab your feet, maybe not. Another option is to grab the edges of the mat, okay, or even wrap the mat around your feet and use it as a sort of belt. So again, your legs will want to roll out, okay? So roll them in. Press down into your heels. And try to extend your heels forward. Be careful with the movement because it's quite strong. Have a look at your feet finally and make sure that the big toes, little toes are leveled. If anything, you want your little toes to move towards you. And then on your next inhalation, let's come back up. Okay. So from here, we're going to start, we're going to come to lie down. We didn't do any breathing practice, so if you like, we can do a very short one before we come into Shavasana. Is that okay? So lying down. It's nice to lie down with the knees bent, maybe your hands resting, one on the upper abdomen, one on the lower abdomen. You could also have one on the chest, one on the abdomen, or your arms by your side. And just begin by taking 2 or 3 normal breaths. And then when you're ready, inhaling to the count of 4. And then pause, counting to 5. And then exhale, count to 7. So the ratio is 4 for the inhale, 5 for the pause, 7 for the exhalation. Count slow or fast. Make sure that you're not straining the breath. You want to establish a comfortable rhythm. And if for whatever reason the counting doesn't work for you or it's making you a bit anxious, just let go of the counting. Make the exhale a little longer than the inhale. Finish the next round. And then you can just come back to the normal breath, or let the breath resume its own rhythm. Okay. So good news, we're ready for the final relaxation. You can continue to lie down with your knees bent if you like that position, quite comfortable for the lower back, or straighten your legs. And we might keep the legs a little wider because we did so much work with the outer hips. I think it's going to feel nice. Or you can elevate your legs with a chair. Another option is to place a blanket under your knees, or surprisingly, and it's very comfortable, under your thighs, under the back of your thighs. I'm going to choose that for me. So position your arms again, either by your side or onto your own body. If you need a bit of support for your head, and maybe take a towel or something. Just give yourself a moment to find a really comfortable, supportive position. Close the eyes and begin to quieten the facial muscles. Relax the skin on the forehead, the temples, the space between the eyebrows. Soften the jaw, the area underneath your cheekbones. Let the weight of the shoulders melt back. Let your arms be heavy. Relax your elbows, your wrist, palms, the back of the hands, the fingers. Let the weight of your rib cage fall back towards the spine. Let your thighs, knees, your feet also be heavy. And begin to pay attention to the movements of the breath again. Feel free to deepen the breath, beginning to notice the sounds, the feeling of space around you, the support of the floor beneath you. And then in your own time, start to wiggle the toes, the fingers. Maybe move your head side to side. And then extend your arms back overhead. If you don't have space, just reach your arms up towards the ceiling. Straighten your legs if your knees are bent. And just lengthen one side of your body, then the other side, and then both sides together. Bend the knees. And roll over onto your right side. And maybe cushion, supporting your head with the right hand or the right arm. And then press into your left hand and come up to sit. On the way up, you can open your eyes. Thank you very much, guys.